Hello, my beautiful patrons. Let's talk about boundaries and edges and why we all have them, but most of us actually don't know where they are. So, if you have ever had sex with someone and they've said something like, you can just do whatever you want, or I don't know, what do you like? Or, yeah, that's okay, you can keep going. This is not how I want you to proceed in your sexual experiences. Because what those examples tell me is that this person has no sense of their boundaries or edges, that this person is not a trustworthy lover, because if they don't know themselves, I cannot know them. And number three, this is an unsafe situation, because if they don't know their edges, and if we cross over those edges and end up crossing a boundary, I'm going to feel terrible, but also I had no information in what that was. So, knowing your own edges and knowing your boundaries makes you a more trustworthy lover. When your lover knows their edges and boundaries, it makes them more trustworthy. Together, you create conversations about consent that are rooted in the knowledge of where we all stand about any particular activity, about any particular day. So, I have written a very long article below, and I'm going to cover some of the key points of it, but please read the whole thing and please ask your questions in the comment section, or you can reach out to me on Patreon in a private message, because this conversation is so broad and yet so beautifully nuanced. And I really want you to have a firm grasp of what we're talking about here, so that, again, you can be a really trustworthy lover, and you can have really awesome, very safe, and embodied sexual experiences. So, the first thing I want you to know is that when we talk about boundaries and edges in sexual experience, it's slightly different than the way we use boundaries in like therapeutic speak, right? So, for example, if you have a coworker or a parent or a friend, you might want to set boundaries with them around how you want to interact with them, right? So, with them, it might sound something like, if you treat me badly, I'm going to leave the conversation, right? Or if you keep interrupting me, I'm going to hang up, right? That's a boundary. It reflects something you're going to do in order to create some space between this action that is harmful or annoying or something. So, this is slightly different than how I'm going to be talking about boundaries in the sexual context, which is your limits of sexual play. And I'm going to add this caveat as well, because I think it might be helpful for some of you. Like, there is no judgment about what your boundaries are or where your edges lie. Knowing what they are makes you super attractive and makes you, again, super trustworthy. So if your boundary is never ever will I have anal sex, great. Then if you have a lover who then meets you there, then they know what they're signing up for. I'm never going to do this specific activity with this specific person, right? So understanding your limits of what is possible for you as a lover is your boundary. This is a hard no for your play. So this could be any particular activity. And again, there is no judgment from me, and hopefully not from yourself, around where your boundaries lie. Because we are all different, beautiful, unique sexual beings, and some of us might be a little bit on this side of the spectrum, and some of us might be a little bit on this side of the spectrum. And it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you're happy and consensual and playing well with others, it's okay. But knowing where you fall on the spectrum and kind of where the hard edges are, where the hard boundaries are, and where some of the edges are, is going to help you have more fun. So a boundary might be a forever boundary. I will never do XYZ. It might be a boundary because of a certain situation, right? I won't have vaginal sex for the next 6 weeks because I just gave birth. Very, very reasonable boundary, right? I'm not going to have penetrative sex until we have a clear STI panel. Great. I will never have sex outside of the bedroom. Okay, fine. That can be your boundary. Fine. The difference between a boundary and an edge is that boundaries are the hard no. And again, a hard no might be forever. It might be for today. It might be until you discuss otherwise. So for example, it might be a hard no, like I will never do that thing, right? I use the example in this article below, like I will never use a ball gag. I have like an asphyxiation nervousness around that, and it really makes me feel a certain way in my body, and I just don't think that's ever going to work for me. So that is a hard no. Something that might be a time-bound hard no is the example I gave of penetration. Like if you've just given birth, your pussy has gone through it. Like, yeah, you are not going to receive penetration in any form for however long you want. And your partner will hopefully be totally on board with that. And there are lots of ways to play that don't involve penetration. That may change in a month or 2 months after your body heals, after your sexuality comes back online, right? So that's a kind of time-sensitive boundary. And then there's boundaries that might be even shorter, right? I'm having some, gastrointestinal distress today, like anal's off the table for today. And maybe tomorrow it's totally fine. Great. So forever boundary, time sensitive boundary, or just for like the scene or just for the moment or the day of. When we agree on a boundary, we stick with that boundary. My partner is not going to try and trick me. My partner is not going to try and cajole me. My partner is not going to punish me for changing, for saying that this is my boundary. Well, you've always said we could have anal sex, and now you're saying we can't have anal sex, and that makes me really angry, or that makes me super mad, or I'm going to pout, or I'm going to sulk, or I'm going to storm away, right? Like, no, I'm just going to say blanket, like this person is not a safe partner because they won't accept your boundary. Edges are a little bit different. Edges are the space where we get to learn and grow and play, right? So you might think of this as a learning edge. You might think of this as kind of experimentation, right? And this might sound more like, well, I've never been spanked before, but I'm really curious. And so I'd like to try it, but I only want to try it for like 5 minutes and then I want to stop and check in. Great. That's one of the ways we can play with our edges. Another one might be, we're going to play with this power dynamic of, let's say, doctor patient, whatever role play you want. And we're going to do this for an hour, maybe 2 hours, right? We're going to play with the edges of this kind of within just this time frame. And then after the end of your time slot, we're going to kind of see how it went, and we're going to debrief. We're going to talk about what might make it better next time. And maybe next time we do a little more intense, or with new props or something like that. But edges give us some flexibility to understand who we are and what we want in any given moment. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about my yes, no, maybe list and how you can kind of work your way through it to help find some of those things that might be the hard no's, but the things that might be the maybes, or like, yeah, I want to try that, but only under this very certain circumstance, or yes, I'd like to do that, right? So we'll talk about that in the next video. The difference between boundaries and edges, like I'm going to come into the body now. So those are kind of some of the logical constructs about it. The way that we know the difference is we come into our body. And the way I want you to start practicing this is right now. I want you to notice both sensations and emotions. Sensations might be something like, I feel warm, I feel cool, I feel tingly, I have goosebumps, I feel, some heat rising from my genitals up into my heart, or I feel spacious, or I feel constricted, or I feel like open, like, oh, tell me more, or I feel closed off, like, oh, this is scary, right? Those are sensations. And when we pay attention to our sensations, these are like indicator lights for what's happening inside, right? So if I find myself feeling, if I notice that I'm kind of scrunching my shoulders, or maybe closing in on myself, or bracing, or like clenching somewhere in my body, then I know that I'm reaching this kind of point where I'm out of my window of tolerance. So, sensation is part of it, emotion is the other part. I feel excited, nervous, scared, sad, blissful, curious, right? All the feeling words. And both sensations and emotions give us a way to check in with ourselves. They're like our check engine lights for our body. So, one of the ways you can check into this is by starting with a body scan. So, just right now, as you sit here or walk around or whatever you might be doing, just start to notice your body in space. You can start with your feet, notice your legs, your thighs, your hips, your back, your belly, your chest or your breasts, shoulders, arms, neck, head. And just notice, where are you holding tension? Where needs to shift a little bit to bring a little bit more comfort or ease? Where do you need to maybe shake some energy out? Where do you need to pull the hair out of your mouth? And then notice your emotions. So anytime I get on camera to record, I feel a little nervous, but I also feel excited and I also feel open. So this tells me my body's in a good place because I'm nervous, but that nervousness is kind of parallel to excitement. And because I feel open and not constricted, I'm going to trust that I'm in my window of tolerance. So your window of tolerance is your capacity, your bandwidth, if you will, for how much you can take. So your window of tolerance is flexible, right? If you have had a shitty night of sleep, if you got yelled at by your boss, if your kids are being buttholes, or if the cat pulled down the curtains, or whatever it might be, your window of tolerance is going to be shorter. And so if you're engaging in sexual play that might be a little edgy, your window of tolerance might not be as big that day. If you've had a really good night of sleep and you had a really awesome breakfast and you had the perfect cup of green tea, this is me, obviously, and you feel, open and playful, your window of tolerance is going to be a little bit broader. You may be able to get a little deeper, be a little bit more playful, be a little bit more open. Understanding your window of tolerance is a moment-to-moment action. And again, you can practice this right now by doing another quick body scan. Notice where you're holding tension, stress, bracing, or clenching. And then notice your breathing. Can you find your breath? Can you expand your inhale and expand your exhale? Are you still here? Or have you disassociated? Has your consciousness left the building? Do you find yourself in some sort of trauma response, like wanting to freeze or shut down or fawn or run away, right? Your fight or flight. These indicators, you can check in with yourself every day. And you can also use them in the moment during sexual play to know whether you are still in your window of tolerance or whether you have crossed a boundary. Again, having good conversations about boundaries knowing what they are ahead of time is really great. And sometimes mistakes happen, whether we're inebriated, whether we just get too excited, maybe there was a miscommunication. Sometimes boundaries get crossed. And the way you know that a boundary is crossed is that you lose access to these embodiment skills. You can't find your breath. Maybe you're hyperventilating. Maybe you just have really shallow breathing. Maybe you can't feel like you're getting enough air in your body. Maybe you have disassociated, right? Your body is going through the motions of whatever you're doing, but you are not there for whatever reason. You may not be able to feel your body, and you might feel numb. You might feel totally gone. You might be totally not attuned to sensation, right? You may be, again, kind of in that like clenched state, kind of this holding, like protective state that you might not even realize. So, again, having conversations beforehand, knowing your boundaries beforehand is really helpful. And in the moment, coming back again and again to your body is how you know whether you are within your edges and have the resources to be within your zone, your window of tolerance, or whether you've crossed over. What else do I want to say about this? Okay, one of the ways you can add these types of check-ins or these types of conversations into your play is by using a simple safe word list. And so our preferred one at home is green, yellow, red. So just like traffic signals, we see them every day. Green means everything's great. Please keep going. Yellow means I need to slow down and maybe check in, right? If I say yellow, that might mean just like slow down or back off. And you can say to your partner or, ask your partner, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you need? You can very quickly use those words to drop in. And if you are in your body and if your partner is attuned to you, you will stay between green and yellow. It should always be an option to call red, and red means everything stops. No questions, no just one more minute, no please can we keep going. Red means full fucking stop. And if you are attuned and if you know your boundaries and edges, you maybe shouldn't have to call red. It should always be available, but if you use your green and yellow consistently, and if you are rigorously honest with yourself, you don't need to call red because you will never push yourself over that edge. And this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning of being a trustworthy partner. Because I know that if I can know where my edges are, then my partner is going to honor them. And likewise, when I know where his edges are, I can honor them. That makes us both trustworthy to each other. This is how you continually build safety in your sexual experiences. And again, no matter where you are on this spectrum of kind of what you like and how you like it, yellow could be anything for you. It might be totally different for you one day than it is for another. Some days I can handle a lot more sensation, and other days I'm just a very sensitive flower and I can't handle very much at all. Okay, let me see what else is in here. I have a whole section at the bottom of this article about what happens when you cross a boundary. And I feel like this is like a whole separate video. We're already at about 19 minutes. So please read that section below about miscommunications, crossed boundaries, and accountability, which is so, so important. And this is not to speak about assault or trauma, because that is not kind of in the scope of this conversation, because that is a violation. So that is not kind of within the scope of boundaries and edge conversation, but it's important to mention. It's also important to mention that for a lot of us, it is sometimes easier to say yes and to go along with something that doesn't feel great, because it's often the safer option, which again is kind of overall not a safe situation, but in the moment, you might have to make decisions based on your safety. And I'll link to a personal essay that I wrote that was very much about I wanted to leave and I couldn't because it didn't feel safe to do so. So I'll drop that link in there. I think that's it for this video. Please read the whole article. Please send me comments and questions. I think this is a very, very important topic to talk about. And, you know, a lot of us have never had this conversation with ourselves, with our lovers, and it can be really powerful. It can be really hard to have these conversations. Like, I know this is why I have a job. It's because I get to help y'all with having these conversations. But also, like, it's one of the most important things you can do for yourself as you become more sexually present, more embodied. If you want to become a better lover, which you're here, so of course you do, understanding where you are is so powerful. So read the whole article, read the links that I've included below, and watch for my next video where I talk about how to work through a yes, no, maybe list so that you can give yourself a starting point for the conversation and the exploration of your flexible edges and your firm boundaries.